Yeah, so I will be talking about interfirm network structure as a part A, and part B is how like a system the structure affects the systemic risk. So, this is how interfirm networks looks like. So, there could be interfirm networks depending on the relationship. So, one of the relationship is the supplier customer relationship, and there could be other kind of relationship like ownership between the firms, but that I am not considering in this talk. So, today we will be talking about this supplier customer networks. So, that is so supplier customer networks that represent the interfirm networks here, and I will be using the terms like supply customer network, interfirm network, supply chain, production network interchangeably, although they have they are different slightly, but I will use those terms interchangeably here. So, for example, this is actually schematic diagram of supplier customer network. So, I believe you are familiar with TCS, Tata Consultancy Service, and they have this kind of supplier like Tejas Network, Microsoft, SAP. So, I do not know they are originally or not, just for schematic purpose I am just describing it, and this so TCS is a customer of these firms, and or they are the suppliers of TCS. Similarly, SBI, Walmart and BSNL, they are the customer of TCS. So, you can see that different supplier actually provide different products. For example, Tejas provide telecommunication related products, Microsoft, SAP, Oracle, they probably provide cloud service or other IT service, where also TCS also provide different service to the different firm. For example, TCS could provide SBI to their software service, IT software service, and also to TCS provides telecommunication service to BSNL, and also to manage this airway, so IT service to British Airways. So, this is a kind of schematic nature of a supply chain network, and you know that these links are very heterogeneous, but getting those data is very difficult. So, generally those kind of data are not available. So, I deal with only the links that do not have any informations, those are binary, and I treat all the links in a equally. If we have this information, that will be good, and to get more macroeconomic dynamics can be understood in more details if we have all the detailed data. So, that was schematic diagram. So, this is the real world data actually. So, this is the data about that there was this TCS, but this is the major automobile company is Toyota. So, we look at how the firms are major firms are 3 step away from this like a supplier, 3 step away supplier and 3 step away customers from Toyota Motors. So, this is the real data, and links are binary, we do not have all the informations, and the color actually represents I think the blue represents manufacturing firms and green represents wholesale companies. So, and you can see that although we say supply chain, it is not actually a chain, and there are a lot of loops, and it is very kind of complicated structure, not simple chain. So, it is a network, and there could be feedback loops in the network, which can affect the macroeconomic dynamics in turns. So, how can we study the large scale networks with like say several million of nodes and links? So, that is our questions here, like. So, what we study here, the structure of this huge supplier customer network. So, you know in the network you probably aware that we look at the links distribution, clustering, those kind of things, the simple property of the networks. But in this talk I will mainly focus on the community structure, how they looks like, and bow tie structure and systemic risk in interfirm networks. So, these are my aim in this talk to, I will explain this to you. So, we use a kind of a Japanese interfirm data, which consists of 1 million of firms and around 5 million links. These links are binary and directed links. So, this data actually this number comes after preprocessing the data, and we remove all the self loop and parallel edges, and this also constitute the giant weakly connected component. So, are you familiar with giant weakly connected component? So, is it like when you view the network as an undirected network, so there is always a path between any arbitrary pair of the nodes. So, all these forms constitute a giant weakly connected component, and this actually constitute the 99% forms of all the available data we have. Actually, it shows that most of the farms in Japan actually present in this data set. So, this is a huge data set, and and also we have information about the farm's location and sector. So, we will try to see how the community structures are presented in the composition of the communities in terms of farm location and sectors. So, generally networks can be represented as a bow tie network. Generally in economic network, the position of the farms is very important, whether it is a upstream farm or a downstream farm. So, if it is upstream farm, like those are mainly supplier, like a first case the upstream. So, they will be in the in component, and whether in the middle component where they produce intermediary goods that can be utilized by the other companies, that will be in the giant strongly connected component, and which produce only the final goods, that will be in the out component. Let us define it more mathematically, like what is in component. In component means the farms that have a directed path to the farms in the GSCC, whereas GSCC, giant strongly connected components, any pair of farms have a directed path between them, whereas the out farms in the out component have are reachable from the giant strongly connected component, and through the along the direction of the network. So, this is actually taken from this paper 2000 paper, which is actually a massive web network, and this network was actually constituted from before Google. So, there is Alta Vista that time. So, they crawl from Alta Vista, and they had like a around 200 million nodes and 1.5 billion links, and they constituted this kind of bow tie network. That so, you can see that 1/3 of the nodes are in component and 1/3 in the giant strongly component, and this is the 1/3 is in the out component. They are more or less equal, and this rest of the things are called tendrils, which are not much important. So, we will mainly concentrate on this in component, giant strongly connected component and out component. So, it has a tight knit and two wings. So, it looks like a bow tie. So, we wanted to verify whether our network, this Japanese network, the Japanese production networks, also shows this kind of bow tie network or not. So, we plotted it like a, so we calculated the in component, out component, GSCC component and the out component, and we visualize using the standard graph layout, like a spring electrostatic layout, and that can be used for network visualization, and this is the surface view of the whole network, and this is the cross sectional view. So, you can see that the network is, all the nodes are very tightly connected, and it has a huge core, the giant strongly connected component, and the in component and out component are very tightly connected, and this could be like a schematic diagram, where 50% nodes belongs to the giant strongly connected component and 20% in the in component and another 26% in the out component. So, you can see that clearly the structure is very different from the web network, and due to this also we calculated quantitatively how the distance. So, the distance of in farms to GSCC is just 96% of them are one step away, whereas 95% are just one step away for the out component. So, we see that there is no wings for a bow tie, and it is very different from a bow tie structure. Due to this visualization, we call it as a walnut structure, like it has a tightly connected to the GSCC, the in component and out component. So, due to this visualization, we called, instead of bow tie, we call it walnut structure.
What was red and blue blobs satellites to the moon.
This is just green is the core, the part of it.
No,
Probably
that
that will come as a community maybe in the later.
But those are kind of somewhat far from the DSCC, like they are heavy like path length of 2 or 4 or something.
No, green is GSCC and the red is in component. So in and GSCC is still connected here. So it's just a, so depending on the view.
Kind of far from the surface, right? So,
Yeah, so
the main block. So does that?
So it's a three-dimensional picture. We are showing it in 2D.
Yeah.
So that's why it's due to the visualization. So it's connected to.
Which has made it.
It made it like this. It's just the visualization. So you know, so next we are interested to look at the community structure. So I think you are familiar with this modularity maximization, which is one of the popular. But modularity maximization has a problem, like it cannot be used well for a very large network. There is a resolution limit problem, and before that, what is community? So you know what is community. So there is no quantitative definition of community. So there is no mathematical definition. It's like a qualitative. Like communities are like the links within the within the group is much higher than the links between the groups. So that is the qualitative difference definition, and in modularity maximization it's like if the links within the group is higher than the expected number of links, then we call it as a community. So, but the modularity maximization has a problem for applying to a large scale network and also to a directed networks. So, it provides similar kind of partition for directed networks and indirected networks. So, it does not take care of the direction of the links, whereas this infomap method, which takes care of the direction of the links, which uses a random walk in its algorithm. So, using this random, so random walk is moving to this directed network, and the portion where the random walk spends most of the time, like if there is a localized region within the network where random walk spends most of the time, that region is the subunit of that network is known as a community according to this infomap definition of communities. And it's optimize the map equation. So, map equation has a form like this, where it uses optimization technique, and so this method is describing the movement within the community between the communities, and this second part, the blue part, is the describing the movement between the communities. So, using this kind of map equation, so it's optimized this kind of map equation to extract the communities from the network, and it's overcome the resolution limit problem, which is observed in modularity maximization quite well. So, we use this infomap technique to detect the communities in this large supply chain network. So, this gives a kind of hierarchy of communities. So, we observe there is a 5 level of communities. So, communities can be further decomposed into sub communities. So, we have, this is the first level of, this is the original network. We have first level of communities, we got around 209 communities in the level 1, and this out of 209 communities, 106 are irreducible communities. By irreducible communities, I mean the communities cannot be further decomposed into sub communities, and this number of farms within this irreducible communities is just 830. So, these are very small, size of these communities are very small, and they only constitute 0.078% of the total farms. And further these communities are decomposed into sub communities, and you can see the second level, the irreducible community is 60,000, and which constitute the 93% of the total farms. So, most of the farms actually belongs to this second level, and they cannot be further decomposed. So, we see that third, fourth and fifth level, the sub communities are very insignificant and they are small, and we can ignore them. So, we are more concentrate on level 1 and level 2 communities. Generally in a dense network we get a deep hierarchy, and for a no, in a dense network you get a deep network we get a shallow hierarchy, whereas in a sparse network we get a deep hierarchy. So, number of level is much higher in sparse network, whereas in a in a dense network we get a less shallow hierarchy, the levels are minimum. So, here it is a sparse network, but still we get a shallow hierarchy. This is because of the fact. So, generally this example was taken that this road network which shows a this California road network, in the literature there is it shows a very deep hierarchy, but there is a physical constraint that nodes cannot be connected to every like all others. So, there is a geographical constraint in a road network, that is why that gives a deep hierarchy, but here there is no such constant as such. So, we get a shallow hierarchy, and this is shows the six communities in the 6 communities of the largest community. So, for example, this first community in size. So, these are decomposed into 6 sub communities. So, differentiating by the colors, and is in the same plot as we used in the first diagram in the same dimension, and these communities are further decomposed into sub communities, and 6 communities are shown. Actually, similarly, the for example, the red is the first largest one. So, the largest one is decomposed into another 6 sub communities. Similarly, the second one is the green one is decomposed. So, they looks like this. So, there is a kind of very much heterogeneous structure is present, and their size varies very differently. So, this is just for visualization purpose. So, here we see that there is a this CCDF of complementary cumulative distribution functions of community sizes. So, we see a kind of a bimodal structure of community size distributions both for info map and modularity. So, this bimodal nature actually indicates the resolution limit problem. So, there is a so some of the communities are very large, and like these communities towards the tail are very large communities are present, and this represents the resolution limit problem both in info map and modularity. In the info map in the level 1, and modularity just we apply for the once. So, iteratively one can apply modularity maximization, but that is a very different, because that is you violate the null hypothesis that you consider each community separately from the network. So, that is a very no, this is the community in the level 1. So, here it is there, but we go beyond that, then the can be overcome.
And how does the primarity shifts affect the resolution?
Like I mean this structure, like
No, that's my move too, but how is it affecting the resolution to this one?
so generally it is not very heterogeneous, and some of the communities have a very large size. So,
Yeah, no, but how is it coming out of resolution limit? Because normally resolution limit is when you have small communities and you can't break them further. When beyond a certain number you can't break.
no, it is other way around, like you have large communities where you cannot break.
Okay.
They are not actually well defined community, although they may not do it. So, this resolution limit problem will be solved in the second level. So, next sorry, we move to this intra community links. So, Pij represents the so Aij is the number of links between the communities, and Lij is the total number of links between the communities I and j, and Pij is this quantity is known as, we define as a polarizability. So, whether this communities the link between the communities is asymmetric, the link weight is asymmetric or it is symmetric. So, if it is symmetric then this will be 0, and if it is asymmetric, so this quantity would be plus minus 1, right. So, the info map we know that it uses this random network. So, we should expect that this quantity should be asymmetric, and if they are uniform, then there is no partition community, right. So, this is we plot the distribution. So, the polarizability versus Lij. So, this is the square root of 1 over Lij, which is a kind of for a random standard deviation. So, in terms it will be 0, but the standard deviation will be 1 by root over Lij. So, this is the expected for a expected number of polarizability from the null model, and we see that there are most of the communities have a higher polarizability than this. So, this is actually we choose only this is I think we use a threshold for the community size. If the community size is greater than 100, we find that 80% communities are having this kind of polarizability, which is shows this asymmetric weight distribution between the inter-community links. So, which actually goes well with the InfoMap method. So, this is the network of 50 largest communities at the top level. So, here we plotted we calculated the center of mass between the in component GSCC and out component, and projected in a 2 dimension such that the flow can be horizontally. So, left side is the firms communities that constitute in component, that would be in the left side, and the communities that constitute out component, that would be right side. So, flow represents from left to right. So, you can see that these are some of these communities like the E3 is a morely dominated with in. So, I will show later that this community has a more forms from the in component, whereas this is constitute the GSCC number 1, and 2, 6 are more like a out component dominated by the forms from the out component. So, this is, and you can see there is this GSCC are very much connected with the in component. So, and whereas out component is away from this GSCC. So, this will be more visible in the next few page and next few slides. So, what I am trying to say here is that there is a communities which are formed by in component and the GSCC forms from in component. So, there is a hybrid kind of communities where forms belong to in component and GSCC, and there is a there are communities where forms constitute out component and GSCC are very less. So, here we try to look at how these communities are actually some of the attributes are overexpressed within a community, and this method is we use a method which was proposed in this paper by Taminello, and this method is actually developed from the statistical validation of overexpression of genes in specific terms of gene ontology database. So, where they constitute we consider hypergeometric distributions, that the probability X elements in cluster C of size n c have the attribute q under the null hypothesis that the element in the cluster are randomly selected is given by this hypergeometric distribution. So, and where n q is the total number of elements in the system q. So, because the attributes are different attributes are present in the data by there is a very heterogeneous distributions of the attribute present in the data. So, we need to follow a proper statistical method to capture whether such any attributes are overexpressed or it is just come by chance. So, using this hypergeometric distribution we can do that. We can associate a p value using this hypergeometric distribution, and this p value for this n c elements we can. So, if this p value is less than 1 by n a, which actually take care of this false positive corrections, and this n a is represents the number of attributes. So, in our case we have in Japan there are actually 9 regions. If we consider region, so we can entire Japan we divide it into 9 regions, and so n a will be 9 in case of Japan. So, it depends on the how many attributes are there. So, if we go to like prefecture level, which is like a district in Japan, they have 47. If we calculate whether such a prefecture is overexpressed, then this n a will be 47. In case of we choose sector, so which level we choose the sector like industry level or sector level or major sector, minor sector, there is a hierarchical classification of sectors. So, depending on the level we choose the classifications, so n a needs to be choose appropriately.
So where is the Bonferroni, like how is it like coming here?
Uh,
Because Bonferroni will come when you are doing say multiple hypothesis
yeah,
testing.
so here we have,
But where I don't
so
know.
we choosing like different regions, like we
Oh,
choosing multiple times.
I see. Okay. Re regions meaning the clusters.
I am coming to this. So regions means
Okay, I see.
the region of Japan. So if you are not familiar with Japan's map, so this is how Japan looks like. It looks like a distorted J kind of. So like a small letter J, you have here it is Hokkaido region, and yeah. So there is 8 regions. Generally Japan is classified in 8 regions, and it has a 47 prefectures. So prefectures, by prefecture I mean it's like a size of our district, and these are 8 regions. Maybe we can say that regions are maybe smaller than states even, yeah, not even states. So these are different regions, and so there are 8 regions, and we also choose Tokyo as a separate region because it is the capital and it has a many farms are located there. So we also choose Tokyo as a separate region. So we have 8 plus 9 1, that is 9 region. So we choose 9 regions, and we try to look at whether the communities are overexpressed in this, which region is overexpressed in which community, and also we have this sector. So I think we choose sector division around 20 sectors. I think we choose at 20 level, where we all the farms can be grouped into 20 different sectors. So if we look at the largest community, which has a size like a almost 200,000 farm, and the level 1, we see that this is mostly actually dominated by 1/3 of the farms belongs to the manufacturing sector, and rest of the farms are from different sectors that we have. Those are not significant enough to represent here. So we say this is a manufacturing community, and these are mostly from urban region. So if you look at this Kanto, this is the Kanto, Chubu, and this Kansai. So these are mostly the urban. So Tokyo is here, and this is the Osaka is here. So these are the main city region of Japan. So these are urban regions, and so we see that the largest community is formed by these urban regions, and it represents the manufacturing sector. Similarly, we look at the overexpression in the second largest community, where is mostly it is agriculture, wholesale retail, and this kind of agriculture, wholesale and food related things are there. So manufacturing, there is actually this is a manufacturing of food. So these are more like a regional, I will say less urban region, or less city oriented part of Japan, and the second community constitute those by those region. And also we here we also express how many farms are from different component of the bow tie structure. So that also, so you can see that this largest component one, community 1, I showed you in the first the picture 1, that it is mostly farms from the giant strongly connected component, first and second. Sorry. The third largest community is again it's a construction and real estate, which are also around Tokyo and nearby region, Tokyo and Kanto. So and this is construction, and fourth is a transport sector, transport retail, which is also like around this Kanto region, Tohoku, Kanto and Chiyobu. Maybe they have their office there. So these are the components. So you can see that in the fifth largest community, the IT, finance, real estate, scientific research, all are actually based in Tokyo. So this is Tokyo based community, this community 5, and community 6 is again the wholesale retail and medical, mostly medical and health sector, which are all over the most of the region. So they are not any particular region. So they are over all of these 5 regions, and you can see that this is actually dominated by the out component of the bow tie structure. So 50% farms are from the out component. So, this way we can show the composition of the communities in terms of locations and their or their sectors, and also from their where they located in the their upstreamness position in the walnut structure here, I will say, instead of bow tie. So, this is the way we connect the community structure with the walnut structure. So, this is the community size distribution at the second level. So, here you can see that the communities are more heterogeneous, we do not have any resolution problem, and it is like a, so they have size from like a fourth order. So, distributed in fourth order, and we see a nice power law here. So, and we fitted this with a maximum likelihood estimation technique with a exponent we got 2.5, and you can and we are interested how to model this, why. So, many actually in a community structure we see the community structure the size distribution follows this power law. So, we tried to model how this power law comes as a community structure distribution, but unfortunately we did not succeed, but it would be very interesting in the future to show how power law arises in community size distribution.
There is a CCDF or the
CCDF.
we are getting -1. So
No, 2.5. 2.5 sorry, 2.5 plus 1, so 1.5.
so the PDF is -2.
Yes, PDF. Next, we try to use how further we try to show the composition of the communities in terms of this walnut structure. Again, so using this barycentric coordinate, and so you know this. So, we use this plane and this in component. So, this is a fraction of forms from in component, function of forms from GSCC, and function of forms from the out component. So, their sum is total 1, and the average expectation value of the, if you take the average expectation. So, this point is the average expectation. So, we show the this plane is in 2D, and it can be represented as a equilateral triangle, and this is the expected fraction of all this depending on the expected fraction of the in component, out component, and GSCC component values. So, we will have this 6 domain. So, here if the forms comes in this domain, so then it will be in component dominated form. So, this is the G, this part will be G component, this is, and this will be exclusively out component, and in between there will be communities belong to I and O, I and G, and G and O. So, in this way we can plot. So, you can see that there are communities many communities in GSCC and out component exclusively, but there are less number of communities in exclusively by in component, except this one. This is a good, large community just which has all in component forms. But there are many communities which are belongs to is a hybrid community which belongs to this group in component and GSCC component. So, here it is we have the table to show how many forms are there. So, in a G domain we have like 1000 forms, around 1000 communities, and it constitutes like a 100,000 around 100,000 forms, and IG we have 800, whereas exclusively Y it is just 200, which is the lowest between this, and IO is also very less, but IG is, so IG is relatively high, and out component forms from only out component is 640, which is also high, and but G and O is very less. So, we can see that in component communities from this hybrid community exist in this domain. So, we do not know this is particularly for Japan, or it is also observed from other countries as well. So, this needs to be checked, and there is it might be just Japan exports most of the raw material from the other countries, that could be also be the reason that we see so many communities with IG composition.
Just remind me what
IG is in component and GSCC component forms from in component.
which directly connects to the GCC.
There is a part from forms in component to the GIS component. There. So, why we study this community structure? So, generally economists use a sector like input output model, where they use the aggregated level as a sector level, where so this is so we try to compare whether community gives something different from the usually economics considers input output model between the sectors in aggregated level. So, this is the supplier sector and this is the customer sector along this. So, you can see that so generally we expect the firms within the same sector are highly connected, but we do not see that here. So, it is only the, so this is actually only retail and wholesale is connected, and we do not see there is much link between the firms within the same sectors. And whereas in a community composition we can see that there is this diagonal line where there is a lot of links between the within the community. So, we have this diagonal picture. So, clearly there is a there is a difference between this sector wise things. So, the firms within the same sectors are not quite connected. So, this needs to be looked into. So, using community structure. So, community structure has a different composition of the sector, it has its own economics and it itself constitutes the small universe. So, this is very important when there is a propagation of distress. So, it will affect the firms within the same communities at the first, and then it will spread to the other communities. But in the sector levels, so if you consider it in a sector level, those kind of you cannot say in terms of that it will only affect a particular sector or the whole sector, because the firms are not that much connected within the sectors. So, so it is better for when one looks into the spreading phenomena, one needs to look into consideration of this community structure instead of sector level aggregation. So, as the first part we studied a large scale production network to summarize it. So, of the Japan that exhibit hierarchical structure of the communities, and detailed investigations of the, we did a detailed investigation of the communities in terms of bow tie structure or the walnut structure in our case, and we saw how the regions and sectors are overexpressed in this within these communities. And we also said that the input output models can be questioned that economists generally consider for different kind of macroeconomic phenomena. So, this is was the first part of the my presentation. So, I will move to the second part, which is the systemic risk. So, any questions so far on this? So, if not, I will move to economic shock exposure across the global firm level supply network. So, that was a national firm level data. So, now we will move to the national global firm level supply chain network instead of just Japan. So, in during the COVID time, many of you experienced this kind of things in the supermarket. So, most of the items was not there, and that was due to there is a interruption in the supply. So, there was not much productions, and it is clearly connected to the supply chain. So, supply chain played a crucial role during this time. So, there was an interruption in the supply. So, that is why this kind of phenomena was observed. Also, there was another phenomena that there was this chip crisis or semiconductor chip crisis, due to there was not much production in this the largest chip maker, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. So, which actually resulted in the chip crisis in the other part of the globe, let us say US and UK, US, UK and Europe, where we have seen there is a mass layoff as well, just due to not because this Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company was not producing enough chip. So, only this single firms like a single, there is a disruption from the single firm resulted a global cascade. So, this is one example. There is another example, you can see that there was this 2011 flood in Taiwan. That time also we have observed shortage of hard disk actually. So, global wise. So, this is quite natural that shocks can propagate from just from a single firm default to the globally. Also, you have recently experienced this 2008 financial crisis, where the shock propagates due to the default of Lehman Brothers, and this propagated to the other from so this propagates to the financial networks. So this is not very new, and this propagates along this supply chain. So it is so we need to look at the topology of the supply chain to look at this to estimate this shock propagation. So some of the recent studies shows that networks production network act as a transmission channel for economic shocks, while every country has benefited from this global trading or the international trading. So which was actually demonstrated by Ricardo's this comparative advantage theory, and but at the same time so countries are exposed to shocks due to this supply chain network. So this was also so some of these empirical studies showed that there is a US natural disaster causes a 3% average output drop for customers for 4 quarters later according to this paper. So these are some empirical study. There was also they estimated the indirect impact of Japanese earthquake, how much it has reduced, like 2.5% reduced a year later, it has reduced the 2.5% of the GDP, which was actually 100 times the immediate direct losses. So there could be indirect loss and long time losses due to supply chain this supply chain networks, this interruption in supply chain. So we ask here we ask this question. So what is the expected economic loss in a given country after a firm's default in another country? Do some countries receive disproportionate distress compared to their size of the economies, whether the distress is equally distributed among the countries or it is a disproportionate, and how unequal is this distress distributed, and how is the economic systemic risk is shared between the countries. So we need to compute systemic risk on a firm level supply networks, and here we developed a new measure to quantify economic systemic risk for countries based on a microscopic shock propagation mechanism. So before going to the mechanism, let me explain you the data. So we have a like 200 firms, which is much smaller than this national firm. So data is not very good, but and the link is around 600 binary directed links, but we can see that and this. So we calculate the degree of the means the sum of the degrees of the firms within a country and its GDP. So we can see there is a strong correlation. So and we can say that degree can be approximation for the size of the economy, and export number of export links also matches nicely, and also imports and number of import links have a strong correlation. So our data is not too bad in that sense, and we can say that our data is reflects these facts quite well. So what is systemic risk? So systemic risk is the potential of a single node or few nodes to disrupt the economy in a large extent, and I have already given you some of the example, like the chip crisis, as I told you, like the Taiwan is there is disruptions, supply disruption in Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company, which resulted layoffs in the other part of the globe, example in Europe and US car manufacturers. So these are some systemic risks, and the firms in the international networks are generally, these are the schematic diagram. So there are firms in different countries, and this is country A, B, C, and they have different number of firms, and there are cross country links and the links within the countries as well. So this is generally the schematic diagram. Let me explain you the method now. So let us say this firm default here. So then it will so it works as an input of firm 2 and firm 3. So you see that firm 3 is totally depends on firm 1. So if firm 1 fail, so firm 3 do not produce anything, and if firm 1 default, it has 2 inputs. So we do not have the link information. So we use that all the suppliers are equally important, if a one, so here like if farm 1 default, so farm 2 will still produce, but it will be active by 50% only. So, in this way, so so we have some we have some assumption. So, but generally there could be other way to think, like if farm 1 actually supplier of a crucial component, if farm 1 default, then farm 2 cannot even produced, because it's produce the very important input for this component. But here we take farm 2 will still produce even if the farm 1 defaults. So, in this way the cascade will propagate along the farms. So, if so you can see, so the iteration will propagate and it will reach a stable configuration after certain time. So, and similarly if farm 2 defaults, it will have no effect on country B, and it will have some effects on country C. So, in this way you will get the stable structure if farm 2 default. So, you can see what will be the average impact on country B if a random farm defaults on country A. So, and we consider here, we consider the probability of default of each farm is equal, and so the impact will be just the average impact. What will be the average impact? So, we will calculate the impact for farm 1 and we will calculate the impact from farm 2. So, and then we will add and then we will divide by this, we will calculate the average. So, this method is actually taken from this data rank method, which was actually originally was designed for a financial network, but we adapted it for supplier customer network. So, if that is the case, so then we can calculate how much is the affecting average. So, here you can see that it affects the farm 3 and 4. So, here the impact is how much it is. So, the size of this farm is, so the size of the farms is the number of degrees. So, it has degree 2, farm 3, the size is 2 and this is 1, the degree is 1 and this has also size 1. So, it will be so this 2 farm is impacted. So, size 2 plus 3, so 3 by 4. So, that is 0.75, whereas farm 2 has impacted nothing. So, the average will be 0.375. So, we approximately rounded it to 0.38. So, in that way you can calculate the expected exposure. So, CD down. So, this down represent the downstream effect. One can also equivalently measure the upstream effect depending on the demand shocks, but here I will only tell you about this downstream exposure. So, this way you can see that this diagonals are generally are mostly have high exposure within the, the exposure is much higher within the country itself, and others are slightly less, and these are the number of links. So, you can see that so these two, although so number of links between the countries. So, you can see that although there is no link between B and C, but still there is a indirect effect. So, although they are not connected, we can see that there is a indirect effect of shock exposure between C and B and C. So, the link is 0, but still we have. But if you only consider the links in a directed case, like export import link between the countries, and if you measure the shock exposure, then you just underestimate the shock exposure. So, you need to consider this supply chain network.
So, this is not directly the net flow of money or something between the countries?
Between the farms of the countries. So, it is a final level, micro aggregating, but we take care of the aggregating from the micro level, not only the direct.
So, for example, when you look at this trade net, in the trade net, net import and net.
Yeah, we have net import export is there, but when we measure the shocks, we measure also take account of the indirect shocks also. So, how much shocks can be propagated from country B to C. So, if you just consider that there is, so since B and C is not connected, so in general thinking will be, if B is affected, there will be no effect on C. but if you look through the supply chain, there is a indirectly B is connected to A and A is connected to C. So, in that way you can you have to take care of this fact, there is a indirect. So, like for example, India and Pakistan there is not much trade relationship, but there is a relationship through Arab. So, if something happened in a product supply, that will also affect the Pakistan. So, in that way. Yes.
So you said there's a relationship between firm 3 and firm 6 via firm 1, right? I'm trying to understand if it's like a graph. So you said firm 3 and firm 6, the countries in B and C are not directly related.
B and C there is no direct.
But there is a relationship via country.
Why?
Can you please explain this thing phenomena using this example?
Yeah, for example, let us say.
So country B, firm 3 is dependent on firm 1 of country A.
Yes.
So this directional arc means that firm 3 is waiting on some component manufactured by firm 1.
Yes,
right?
that's correct.
Okay. So then, and then the country firms 6 in country C has a downstream relationship from firm 1.
1 and 2 also. 2 directly 2.
So how is firm 3 affecting firm 6?
No, firm 3 is not affecting firm 6, but firm 5 is affecting firm 6.
Okay. So then are we not then actually in this graph, are we not looking at the effect any firm has on any other firm is basically just the reachability graph.
Yes.
From this vertex, all the vertices you can reach.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
So that's the effect of
Yes.
one's, sort of influence.
Yes, if there is a path, directed path, then it will be affected. But so how much it will be affected, that depends on the dynamics.
These links have some weights associated.
So in principle that will be great, but we do not have data at that level. So we are considering only binary links.
And the longer the path, less and less the effect it is. Is it correct to say the shorter the distance?
Yeah, for
more direct.
yeah, you can see here it is 50% affected. This is also 50%. Here it is just 25% affected. So it depends on how many supplier you have. So depending on that, you will be affected. So it depends on your number of supplier.
So it doesn't get attributed simply by rest of the pathline.
No. A total effect is called the data rank actually, but we aggregate, we calculate it as a depending on how much a country is affected, like a sub-regions kind of, and we can calculate that how A affects B. We aggregated these shocks and we get this kind of things, and this I am saying that this matrix of expected exposure is different from the, if you just consider the directed links between the countries. There is some relation, so it provides a kind of the measure, but there is also indirect effect. So that was the toy model and our method, and this is the real data. So here so each row represents a country and each column is also a country. So this is a country matrix, and countries are sorted according to their continent, and within the continent we also sorted according to their sub regions. Like Africa is sorted around this is the sub-Sahara and Middle East, I think, and this Asia is Oceania, Europe. Europes are also sorted according to whether it is East Europe, West Europe, and that way. And North America is also sorted according to, like within the group there is a sorted, like there is this economic agreement between US, Mexico and Canada. So, they are sorted accordingly, and this is South America. So, we can see that there is this diagonal is very prominent, which is also reflected for this directed. So, this measures is also number of directed links between the countries is reflected quite well, these two things, but there is a block diagonal structure which is not that much prominent here, and we can see that there is this block diagonal. So, if a country propagates more shocks to its nearby regions, so that is why this block diagonal region appears, and we also see this magenta, horizontal magenta lines for this here, which is actually affecting all the countries, and this is actually the countries belongs to Western Europe, and these are belongs to this some of the North American countries, which affects the all other countries, and some also Asian countries affects the all other countries. So, this is how the average exposure looks like. So, this is we can see there is a very much asymmetric nature between how countries are affected by this SOX exposure, and we tried to calculate how it is distributed, whether it is. So, clearly they are not equally distributed, and we would like to measure how unequal these SOX exposure are, and again to show you how this direct effect and indirect effects are related. So, this is we exposed value, it is in absolute terms. So, we multiplied by the size of the country. So, you can see that well there is a very strong correlation between the two quantities in the average out degree of firms between country C and D and the exposed value, but still there is a 2 order of magnitude difference between this. So, there is a strong good amount of indirect exposure. So, this graph shows that not. So, we need to consider the indirect exposure as well to calculate to consider the to do not underestimate the SOX exposure. So, we need to consider this this indirect exposure we need to take care of. So, that is why we need to look at the supply chain network as a whole in a microeconomic level. So, it is one can, it will be even better if you can go to the product level, but that kind of data is unavailable at the moment. So, as you go to the micro level, you can measure the SOX exposure more accurately. So, we can further like to measure how the systemic risk is distributed among the countries. We group all the countries into 3 groups with equal number of countries in each group. So, depending on their GDP per capita. So, some of them are high income group, middle income group and low income group like this depending on their GDP per capita, and we showed the average exposure here, and you can see that how they receive. So, there are few facts to be noted here, that high income countries actually so high income countries are affecting all other countries, all other income group countries, whereas middle income countries mostly affecting the low income countries and mid income countries, but not much to the high income countries, and low income countries are not much affecting others. So, and the maximum is here. So, mid exposure countries affect themselves most, and low income countries get most of the exposure from the mid income countries and high income countries. So, this is a very much aggregate level, and you can say that these numbers are not much make sense these numbers, but this is because we aggregate in a very top level, and the standard deviation is very low here also because we aggregate over a very high level. So, that is why it looks like that, but we can also plot the total exposure that a country D gets from and its GDP per capita. We can see that there is a strong anti correlation between the GDP per capita and the exposure. So, lower the GDP per capita gets the higher exposure, risk exposure. So, the risk is not evenly distributed, and most of the low income countries get more risk from the high income groups and mid income groups. So, there is a general popular belief, higher the risk, higher the returns. So, we tried to calculate whether they have gaining anything by taking so much the maximum risk. So, we calculated the average growth rate in GDP per capita for the 20 years, last 20 years, and we and compare with the total exposure. We find that there is no as such correlation. So, with respect to the growth in GDP per capita and total exposure. So, we also, so this is for I am showing the data for average growth in 20 years. We also looked at average growth of GDP for 10 years and 5 years, and there also it does not show any correlation. So, the low income countries also not gaining anything in terms of average GDP per growth in average GDP per capita by taking the risk, this disproportionate risk. This is FDI inflow also is tried to compare the average FDI inflow per capita between this last 20 years between 1998 and 2018. So, we find that there are also not much correlations. So, they are not gaining anything by taking this disproportionate risk. We try to measure the inequality in this risk, and we find that you plotted this Lorentz curve. This red curve is for this risk exposure, how much total risk exposure of the countries, and we sorted this by the number of lowest to highest exposure of the countries and cumulative share of people here. So, we find that from this Gini coefficient we measure, this is 80.83 83%, which is much more unequal than the GDP, the Gini coefficient for the GDP, which is around I think 60. So, yeah. So, to compare with the GDP, it is much more unevenly distributed, this risk is unevenly distributed. So, to summarize, we offer a method to quantify the exposure of countries to farm defaults in other countries, and global economic systemic risk is distributed more unequal than the income per capita, and poor countries are disproportionately affected, and risk associativity with respect to GDP shows that rich countries expose everyone, but poor countries expose only poor countries. And we have some limitation of this study. So, we do not have the link weight I said, and we do not have the product information either, and we also do not have the revenue information of the firms, and the network is static, and we consider only this linear production function, this Leontief production function. There are other production functions are there, we have not taken care of that. So, with that I will end my talk. Yes.
Yeah, so, but if you think about it like then like if a poor country then isn't it a problem for everyone that like either they have to help them or the problem will spill over the problem.
What do you mean by mess up? This is
like mess up in the sense let's say economy tax. Then like isn't it a bigger problem for everyone if they are
tax.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, so then isn't it a big problem for everyone else? As in, either they have to help them contain it or the problem will spread. The problem will spread. So why is it that it doesn't affect it?
No, I am not saying it does not affect, it affects more less, it affects less poor. So, what is the question I am getting? So, like it affects, but it does not affect as much. If
it seems like a big effect.
Yeah, for example, the Taiwanese farm defaulted, it resulted like a huge chip crisis.
For example, Greece had an economic crisis, so it was a problem for the entire EU that like
not as much if like a US defaults. So, like if US defaults, then it will much more, right? Effect is still limited in that sense. So, and I am just considering calculating this for the effect of a single farm default, not the entire country. So, if the entire country defaults, the default will be much higher. So, here I am just if a random farm defaults in a particular country, what is the impact? So, it is a more like average study. Yeah, of course, if all the farms in a country differ.
You classified them as like are you saying that a single farm in a high income country defaults and what is the impact versus a single farm in a lower income country also?
Yes.
This sort of thing. They don't have any weights associated with maybe certain, based on geopolitical conditions and so on, maybe certain links are at a more higher risk of being, so what I'm saying is maybe for geopolitical reasons, some firms are particularly vulnerable, and therefore the links coming into them are at a higher risk of rupturing or creating destabilization and so on and so forth. So is there a way to sort of capture these things? Like under normal circumstances everything is functioning well, but maybe due to current circumstances or recent past, some links are more higher risk of failing, and therefore maybe there is alternate pathways to keep the system going.
Yeah, so there is a one can substitute the supplier also. So there is a possibility. So we have not, for this we have not considered, but we also did some calculation for substitution, taking substitution probability of a firms. So they can substitute that, but
So, this type of graph, what it seems to me if you're studying at these cut vertices, like those removal, it disconnects the graph somehow. Like there's a notion that graph vertex.
is how much is that?
Yeah, cut vertex, cut edge. Like removal of that vertex will disconnect the graph.
Yes.
And similarly, cut edge, removal of that edge will disconnect the graph and so on. So, is that the sort of thing that you're also looking for? Because some links are more important, some firms have a much more downstream.
Yes, that is very impact, but it's more into, we also include economic perspective into it.
Right. Yeah, that is the thing
That is the
So actually, Shushmita, what you're mentioning would be very relevant. For example, now that with Ukraine, Russia war, you have this complete disruption of the usual energy supply lines, and then like if Trump actually raises the tariffs, there'll be a huge disruption. So one can actually study how this will play out.
Correct.
In using these kinds of models.
Right. Yeah, that you said North America, like US, America, Canada, Mexico have long had this NAFTA treaty. Trump came and blew it up, and I mean Canada has lots of reasons.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of these things may not be true at all times, but certain times these things become much more relevant.
Yeah, so the duration of the.
Okay, so and also you're only studying. Do people study it in a dynamic setting? Maybe the thing that we are talking about is more relevant in a dynamic setting. Like circumstances change.
Yes.
Therefore, have people study these things?
It's very difficult to get the data actually. It's not a.
No, but you can set up a simulation. Like what if you, given the current exposure, what if you suddenly cut this couple of links between countries?
Yes.
And then one can actually try to look at what's the effect.
Even this data is, I think, 2018 data. That it has changed a lot. Things are changing. Yeah, one can simulate various scenario, but how much it will reflect the present scenario is the question. So, and how accurate it will be. So there will be some bias, but yeah, some approximately one can measure that. I think there are some studies on that. This Ukraine thing, this like food supply and all this.
Okay, so if there are no further questions, let's have Abhijit.